Some information about me. The one thing that you should take away from this is there is a Twitter handle here, and I am the worst Twitter user in this room by far, for sure, and probably in all of Magento. I didn't actually have a Twitter account until the last Mage Titans, and I was sitting next to Steve Yankovic, and he's like, no, you got to get on this right now. Just sign up. It's that easy. So I'm on there. I'm trying to get better about it. We'll see where that goes. Let me see if I can bring up a different view here. Maybe something with some notes in it. That would be good. All right. Hopefully I can see these. Okay, perfect. All right. So I'm going to start with one of my favorite slides. I always like to lead with this slide. This is I think it represents a really powerful reality in our open source engagement. 6,000 contributions across requests and issue reports. I mean, that's tremendously impressive, and it speaks volumes to your participation in our activities here. And I think a lot of companies would look at this, a lot of open source companies would look at this and say, hey, these are meaningful metrics. We've arrived at open source. We're done. At Magento, we're not even close to done with this. We hold ourselves to a bit of a higher standard, and in community engagement, we're going to double down hard. That's what I'm here to talk to you guys about a little bit today, is one of Magento's greatest assets, if not the greatest asset, and that is the folks that I'm looking at right now. So I have not had a chance to meet very many of you. I've only been with Magento for a little over 6 months. I thought I would give you a little bit of background. The Vice President of Technology, it sounds like, I don't know, maybe what do I do? Just engineering? No, it's actually a pretty complex set of functions. So I manage the engineering team and the quality team. If there are bugs, they are my fault. So that is something you can definitely sling my way. I also run the operations group that support all of those activities. I run our program management office, which gets us aligned with inter-department requirements to get code out the door. I run a digital experience group that includes things like user experience, design, technical documentation. And that means basically that product Paul Bovair, and I are jointly responsible for getting Magento 2 out the door. We're responsible for every release. We're responsible for every iteration. Like I said, I joined 6 months ago, so my very first week on the job was Imagine 2016. What a crazy way to get introduced to the broader Magento community. It was a literally life-changing event for me. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I've been doing this for about 20 years. I began my career as a developer. I wrote my first payment integration against Authorize.net back in the late 90s. And I've heard it's come a long way since then, so hopefully so, because it was a real pain in the ass back then. I'm based out of the Austin, Texas office. As you guys know, Magento has offices all over the world. Our primary MDC development centers are Kyiv, Ukraine, and Austin, Texas. So I bounce between those offices quite a bit. Along the way, I picked up a bachelor's degree in business from the University of Texas. Hook 'em horns, probably not going to resonate here, but I've got to do it. And did my graduate work at MIT. I like to use this little line drawing. I do not draw, so this is definitely not my work. Because one, I think I look great in it, and two, it gives you a little bit of insight into things that I like, right? I'm an avid skier. We're just now turning the corner for ski season in North America, so I cannot wait to get out on the slopes. And I'm a huge dog person, so, and I mean that quite literally. I have a Great Dane that weighs more than I do. Makes for some very interesting sleeping arrangements. All right, so let's, enough about me. Let's get into this concept of engagement, and let's talk about a primary principle for engagement, which is enablement. And I take this very, very seriously, because I believe a community that tries to be engaged but is not enabled to be engaged is just going to be frustrated. And so we're looking to kind of get beyond that. And let me kind of paint a picture of the different levels of engagement that you see with a story from my career. So before I joined Magento, I spent 5 years at Volusion. You guys probably heard of them, SMB player. My job at Volusion was to bring a new product to market. And so we spent 2 years working on it. In 2014, we actually launched Mozu. Some of you guys may know that Mozu has been in the news very recently. They were spun out of Volusion, acquired by a company called Kibo, which is a roll-up of, I think it's Shopatron and Market Live, all run out of a private equity group based out of Dallas. When we brought Mozu to market, we said, we don't need partners. We're going to capture all of this money. We're going to capture all of this value. And so our partner program was anemic to be best, and really kind of maybe predatory at worst. I don't know if any of you guys were approached by those folks, but the buy-in terms were pretty expensive. The commission structure was not very competitive. As a result, Mozu's community is about like this. And when you look at companies like Mozu and Demandware and ATG that don't have these vibrant community that we have, I can tell you right now that if you ask me what our primary competitive differentiation is for Magento, it is this community, and it's something that has truly blown me away. So during that first Imagine earlier this year, not only did we launch a bunch of stuff, right? We launched our marketplace product. We launched the Magento 2 Enterprise Cloud Edition. We announced our partnership with Meet Magento. We launched a new initiative on B2B. But the most important thing that came out of that was the launching of a concept, and that concept is We Are Magento, and it's really more than a rallying cry, folks. It is a testament to the cohesion of this community, and it actually is a testament to how inclusive we feel this really is. We don't succeed without you, right? We have an amazing army of talent that our merchants have at their disposal. So when a merchant's choosing software and they've got the option to go with Magento, who has a huge global ecosystem of partners, or they're going with somebody smaller like Mozu who doesn't have a whole lot. Well, the balance is easily on our side, and it is a meaningful competitive differentiator. So our shared success between the community and Magento proper drives a great level of synergistic and symbiotic relationship, right? This is something that we've got to nurture, we've got to put energy into, and that's what I'm here to talk about a little bit today. And I'll tell you that the real key to scaling this platform is going to be in this engagement, right? I mean, we're talking about a massive piece of software. It's got a lot of complexity built into it. We build for not the end user, but we build for an intermediary, right? We build a platform for you to customize and take that last mile. So we're committed to this concept of continuous improvement and our ability to allow decentralized participation in our software. And I'm kind of referring to all of that as the democratization of our open source process. So what do I mean by that? Well, democratization is all about access and opportunity. It's about community-driven workflows and bringing this transparency that's necessary to accommodate this sometimes feels a little bit uncomfortable. And you guys are probably going to see me get a little bit uncomfortable on stage today as we talk through some of those areas of transparency that are less comfortable. But look, it means we have to be meaningfully divulgent, right? We have to give you meaningful information that you can use to make your businesses more efficient and more effective, so you can market your services better. And we've got to do this with direct insight into our in-flight efforts, right? I think we don't do a great job right now of telling you what we're working on. We tend to spring things on you, and that's a character flaw of Magento that we recognize and that we're working on. So I'm going to walk through a storyboard, if you will, of how we have applied our very good intentions, accepted your very good feedback, and hopefully made meaningful improvements. And I'm going to start with the first uncomfortable slide of the day, the Magento 2 merchant beta. And just by a show of hands, how many of you out there were involved in the merchant beta process? A handful. So you guys certainly have my condolences. I understand it was a bit of a rough ride. I wasn't actually here for the merchant beta, but I did do a meaningful retrospective with the team when I got here to really accommodate those learnings and see what we can do going forward. A couple of things came out of merchant beta. One, we abused the idea of beta, right? We took a beta product and told you to take it to production immediately. That's a dangerous proposition anytime you do it. And then to make matters worse, we took the merchant beta off the upgrade path from GA, right? We spent enough time in there and fixed some core things like class signatures that didn't make it very easy for you to actually get upgraded to the Magento 2 product when it GA'd. We had a lot of great reasons for wanting to do this, right? We wanted you guys to participate in the marketing effort that M2 was bringing with it, and we frankly wanted you guys to get excited about M2. But again, I think there were some significant missteps with what we did there that we're learning from, and I want to kind of show how we've applied that as we go forward to Magento 2.1. We did a release candidate process instead of a beta process. The release candidate process had a caveat. Don't take this shit to production. It's not ready. It was also a really good opportunity for us to show you how we're accepting feedback and work through it. So we did an RC1 in May. We had an RC2 2 weeks after that with direct feedback already accommodating some of the challenges that you guys had identified on our behalf. And then we did an RC3, which is essentially the gold master. We were very clear about no production on this. We gave you early access and early visibility into it. And we got great feedback on that this was a much better, much safer process than what we went through with the merchant beta. We also got feedback that, look, if you want me to have an extension ready to take advantage of your new staging product, 30 days is not even enough time for me to understand what the hell you guys just built. So we also got that feedback loud and clear as well. And we're working to get that even better. So a few weeks ago, we launched to our partner network the B2B Alpha program. And B2B Alpha represents another iteration on how we're going to try and get code into your hands faster, give you better insight into the work that we're doing. B2B Alpha is the first time in Magento's history that we've released to our partners pre-MVP code. And now if you don't speak product management, MVP stands for minimum viable product. And that's essentially a collection of features and behaviors that kind of all have to go together in order to answer the market question. The pre-MVP code, basically we take our development task probably the same way that you guys do, and we go iteratively against that. If I've got 10 features I need for my MVP, I'm going to start with feature 1 and feature 2 and some sequence within there. So what I end up with is near production quality code that's just not quite ready to be marketed. There's no reason that we shouldn't share that with you guys as soon as we have it identified, right? Because at that point, we've at least identified class signatures aren't going to change, APIs are going to be, locked in for the areas that we're working in. And so the B2B Alpha program is going to give you access way ahead of GA. I don't think we've even, as far as I know, not announced the release date for B2B yet. That could have happened at MLAU. I wasn't there, so I'm going to catch up with my buds when I get back to the States. And again, with the Alpha code, there'll be no production deployments, right? This is, we're going to be real honest about anything that's pre-production should stay pre-production. So B2B Alpha, I think it's a great story. I think it actually, tells a very good progression of how we're listening and iterating. But what about what's going on right now and the frustrations of today and insights into what's happening? I got to give this talk a couple of weeks ago in Romania. And one of our Magento masters, Sander, sat up on stage and he was kind of an ask me anything situation, and they asked him anything, and he said, well, what I'd really like to know is what the hell happened with SUPI 8788 and what is Magento going to do about it? And I didn't have a very good answer for him at the time. But since then, I've done a little bit of digging in. And in fact, the team had already dug in by the time I started asking the questions. Here's the harsh reality. M1 patches right now exist outside of our engineering and IT controls. That's done for speed to market, and it's done for, well, it's not done anymore, let's just say that. So we have identified, I think, a significant gap in what we could, where we can cause pain. And I think now we've plugged that. We brought the M1 patch process into the M2 release process, and we're continuing to improve our investments on M1 patching. So if you were impacted by SUPI 8788, it's got great stuff in it, and it is in much better shape now than it was when we first launched it. So I want to suggest that you get out there and do that. This is not a success story yet, right? Hopefully the next time I give a talk like this, I can be able to point to, our subsequent release didn't have a patch for the patch, and didn't cause you guys lost hours in productivity. So we're working towards that. And this concept of intentional iteration, right, it's no accident. This is something that we live and breathe at Magento. It's in our DNA. Listen, learn, and cycle. I say this all the time to my team. I consider any failure, any shortcoming to be a learning opportunity. If you're not taking advantage of that as a learning opportunity, you're doing yourself a disservice. So you got to own it, and then you got to make it better. And then all of this kind of leads us to this concept of diversity of perspective, right, which is something that the open source community does so well. And I'll be honest, this is the first time I've actually worked in an open source company, and it's pretty eye-opening. I'm learning something new every day. But diversity of perspective, and just in case you guys don't know, really represents the concept that multiple viewpoints working on one problem are always going to result in a better solution than any one person can come up with. And the easy example here is, imagine you're writing a login form for a client. They say, hey, I need a login form. I want to demo it in a week. You're like, I write login forms all day. I got this. You go write your login form, you go to demo it to your customer, and they're like, well, where are all the accessibility requirements? We sell Braille. Our customers are all visually impaired. Well, that would have been great insight to have when you were doing it the first time, right? And so what we're trying to do now is take all these magnified voices that we have in our open source community and apply those all to the solutioning that we're doing. And to do that, we've got to get very active about championing these community contributions. I think somebody alluded to it earlier, Nils. We have a boatload of pull requests that we're currently sitting on right now. And I can say that because I looked before this session, and it's 275. This is us not doing a good job for you, and it's frankly us not doing a very good job for ourselves. So what we want to do is find a way to get faster at taking potential value from a pull request and getting to actualized value in merged code that's available to everybody. And what do we need to do to get there, right? So I think part of it is in tooling and getting better, more trustworthy analysis on our GitHub pull request. Right now you get a little green check mark next to your pull request if you met most of the Magento coding standards. It's nice, it looks good. It doesn't tell you anything about the trustworthiness of that pull request or the testing vectors that you need to cover as a result of that pull request. So it's us investing more in getting those PR inspections going better. That's going to help us not only internally, but it's going to allow us to do great things with the community. So we can and we will improve our community engagement and our open source collaboration. This is going to accelerate issue throughput, which benefits everybody. And I want to share, I want us to think back to that first slide I showed, right? 6,000 contributions. The news is not all bad, right? We're sitting on a ton of pull requests. We've got work to do. But I want to call out, some individuals that have made contributions and talk a little bit about how that's worked. So Dennis Ristic, and I don't know Dennis. I've used him twice now, and I should probably reach out and let him know that he's on my slide. But Dennis is a guy that I picked out of our pull request based on the feedback that he got. Dennis went through a static asset deploy challenge where he was having performance issues, trying to, because we're open source, he was able to dig in and actually understand what those issues were. Looks like we were, not giving him much granularity in his selection of which assets to push up. Well, rather than, bitch and moan and bang on his keyboard, he may have done that a little bit too, but he also fixed it. And he went into the code and he created flags where you can determine with a high degree of granularity what assets need to get deployed and when. He made it better, we agreed, and now that's value that everybody can enjoy. So it's a great story. It's one among many, and we do have lots of these to choose from. And so if there's somebody here who's done a bunch of contributions and I didn't call you out, it is all on me because I'm just reusing the one guy I found and I like his picture. Pull requests aren't the only way to contribute, right? We've got an open philosophy that extends to tech docs and best practices. Basically, if you have an idea about how to work with Magento better, we want you to be able to share it. And I've got an example here of some tech doc contribution from Vinay Kopp. Hopefully you saw his session earlier today. And this is, an opportunity for us to say, look, Vinay dedicated his time and effort to go tackle a problem that wasn't well understood in the Magento community. And then not only did he do that, but he shared it with everybody. So we want to get better about doing attribution and providing credit for the work that you do on behalf of your community. So what's next? What do we do to try and get better at all of this? And this speaks directly to my lack of artistic ability, or this would be a much more visual slide. Component level activity heat maps. Sounds like a whole lot going on there. But look, here's what I mean by that. We do our development the same way you do, right? We use GitHub. It gives me great insight and analytics into which modules are changing when. I want to make that perfectly transparent to you, especially at the release level, but really even on an ongoing level, where I can basically say, we've divided the Magento product up into a number of components, payment component, catalog component, search, and I can tell you how many changes and how much is going on inside those components. So this is an option to get kind of a very high level view that might help you direct your efforts as you're looking at a patch release or even a version release. And we want to get better about active outreach, right? And me being here is a part of that, but it's not the whole story. We want to make sure that all of our engineering team has the opportunity to interface with the folks that are doing work, right? It not only does a great service to the community because you get access to the folks that are actually building it, but it does a great service to our engineering team because they can actually see the value that they're delivering, and it's a really important piece of the puzzle. And then more alpha, right? So I'm really pleased with what we're doing with the B2B alpha. I think that may be the right model going forward. I'm going to listen to all of your feedback, and if it's not, we'll change it. So that's where we're headed. We want to make sure that we continue to enable you to succeed with as little pain as possible. And there's one big place of investment where we can do that, and that's in automation. So M1, as you guys know, was largely a manual tested piece of software. Army of folks banging on keyboards, running through use cases. As many companies have found, manual testing simply does not scale. And it especially doesn't scale at Magento, where we have not only a proliferation of use cases operating against our platform, but we have an absolute proliferation of configurations and environments that you can actually run the Magento software in. When you put those together, the permutations go nuts, and there's not a reasonable way to handle that without investing in automation. So one of the things that I've done in my short time here is I brought on a director of operations that is an automation guru, and we're currently in the process of investing significantly in automation tooling. 3 primary areas that I've asked him to focus on. One is in our CI/CD process, our continuous integration, continuous deployment. That goes to speaking towards the pull request inspectors that I talked about earlier, getting more trustworthy and getting deeper understanding of the impacts of those pull requests. The other area that he's going to focus on is regression, and this is probably not as exciting for you guys as it is for me, but let me tell you, regression at Magento is a painful, painful process. It is an all hands on deck. It is a long time, and it is just not where it should be in terms of automation. So we're making a huge investment in that right now. I think we're going to actually end up returning about 90% of our time on regressions as a result of this activity in Q1. So really looking forward to that. What that means for you guys is you get code in your hands faster, you can get code in your merchant's hands faster as well. The other area we're investing in is behavior-driven development. And I don't know if you guys are up to date on this stuff yet. It was fairly new to me. Behavior-driven development is really this idea that you can take natural language acceptance criteria from your user story, interpret those into test automation automatically. At the very least, it feels like it can reduce the amount of boilerplate work that test automators are having to do right now in the code. So that's where we're headed. We're going to implement rational automation that results in trustworthy analysis. And what do I mean by rational automation? Well, there are some places that don't make sense to automate. And we used to have a blanket rule at Magento that if you fixed any defect, you had to check in that defect and an automated test that proved that that defect worked. Well, that sounds great, except that some of our defects are misspellings. And that is an absolute waste of automation energy to go and automate against a misspelling. The other thing that I think draws into the concept of rational automation is that rather than, when you do find a defect that you need to go write an automation test for, rather than write that in isolation, let's incorporate the automation piece into the scenario, right? And this is getting back to scenario-based testing, which is going to get us, I think, a better picture of how the workflows work and make sure that we're covering all those edge cases as we open them up. So we're getting much more sophisticated about our quality testing. We're going to deliver, trustworthy analysis, and that's the initiatives that we're focused on right now. So let me conclude, and I think I've actually run through this at my record rate, so hopefully we're almost back on schedule. Let me conclude by saying that this is a team effort. We can all put our hands in together. We're going to win where others fail, and we're going to do that only because we are Magento. Thank you guys so much for your time today. It has been a phenomenal show. Thanks to Mage Titans for having me up here, and I can't wait for next year. Sounds like there's a great lineup. So if you guys have any questions for me, please find me at the bar. All right. Cheers, guys. Thank you.